You're watching Nightline. October is Social Development Month. This year's theme is working together to build caring and sustainable communities. The aim is to engage communities to identify their challenges and put together action plans to deal with those challenges. The Department of Social Development, the National Development Agency, and the South African Social Security Agency are running a joint campaign to help implement the initiative. To find out more, I'm joined by the Minister of Social Development, Lindiwe Zulu, CEO of the NDA, Thamo Mzobe, and SASSA CEO, Busisiwe Memela. Good evening to all three of you, and thanks very much for coming through. Perhaps you can kick off by telling us of what you are planning to do this month and why.
Yes, absolutely. As you rightfully said, this is the month of social development, and the three of us are working together collectively at national, provincial, and local to coordinate our efforts towards empowering our people so that our people can be able to stand on their own 2 feet. But of course, the Department of Social Development, NDA, and Social Development are the vehicles to help us to get there. That's the reason why we adopted the portfolio approach. Out of 25 years of democracy and experience, we realized that part of what is a problem in us as government, the three spheres of government, but also national, was the fact that we are not coordinating enough so that the impact of the programs that we have are not programs that are for us, but those are programs that can make the difference to our people. Hence our approach in the 6th administration that we need to have a united approach and a coordinated effort towards
Stop working in silos.
Stop working in silos, in short.
Ms. Mzobe, what is going to be your specific contribution to the campaign?
Our specific contribution, Voyo, is mainly on rural women. Mainly we are focusing on Limpopo because it's spring season. They are more into food security. They are producing a lot of food. As we proceed in this month to observe the World Food Day, that's what we want to elevate from our communities, because there are women who are in the space of food production. There are youth, there are young men that are so active. The intergenerational approach within the beneficiaries that are getting grant from SASSA, which we now call them clients, no longer beneficiaries, plus the active aging women and older persons that are participating in old age programs of social development. Those are the ones that we are targeting to be more productive in food security so that our country doesn't run out of food, fresh vegetables. And as we proceed to procure from those women through social security in terms of SRD, we use and we target those clients within which they are clients of grant beneficiaries, but as well they are becoming business entrepreneur in their own approach. So we strengthen them, we capacitate them, we give them implements, we partner with other government departments, because National Development Agency is not only for social development, but is for the government across the spectrum of South Africa.
Ms. Memela, what is your contribution to the campaign?
Our space is a very interesting space because we deal with a wider range of clients. In relation to what we contribute towards, what the focus is with regards to NDA, we have dedicated 30% of the over 400 million that we have in terms of social relief of people in distress to people that are in cooperatives, because we believe once we are able to ensure that they can get the funding, when we've got clients that require to actually get a food, we can make sure that we get that food through NDA. The other area that we focus on is obviously the mothers of the children who are of critical importance. We need to look for opportunities of ensuring that we can create a better life for the women so that we make sure that they don't in future also have their children being beneficiaries of social grants. So we need to find opportunities of linking them to education opportunities, but also opportunities of linking them to job opportunities, focusing again on the approach that the presidency is using of saying when we go to KZN in terms of what we've just done there, the one area that we focus on, which was in Lusikisiki. When we go to eThekwini, look and identify those communities where we can make sure that we work with all structures of government so that we can ensure that we enable these women to get out of poverty, but to create a better life for their children.
Now, the conversations you will be having with these people, communities, or the clients, as you now call them, ostensibly the idea is to identify the challenges, but of course put in place action plans to deal with these challenges. Let's speak to some of the first known challenges that your department and the agencies face, starting perhaps with the foster care crisis. Now, where is that now? You have until, what, next month to come up with, to give all of us an idea of how you are dealing with the problem. First Minister, before we get to the actual plans, maybe you could take us back, to what actually happened. In other words, how did we get to the crisis we are in now, which your department spoke about in Parliament recently?
Look, I think that as South Africans, we must appreciate the fact that 25 years of democracy and trying to create systems and institutions that are really viable for us, it's lessons learned and what is to do most. Right now, the department is focusing on what is expected of us, but tomorrow, actually, we're making presentation both to the portfolio committee, but also to cabinet, because there's a policy that is existing, and the policy comes through from the constitution itself. And I think the challenges has always been, you have foster care issues, you've got foster care families, you've got a foster care where people have to be taken care of, not by you as a department, but by the others. And then you've got to make sure that you fund them, then you've got to make sure that they comply, then you've got to make sure that ultimately it's not about the foster parents or the foster, it's about what needs to be done for the child. The policy has been developed, and of course I was saying to the department this morning, I don't want us to consistently to be told by the courts what to do. I think we must be able to know what's the right thing for us to do. Hence our response to the Gauteng High Court decision. We've put all the systems in place to make sure that we don't have this crisis, but not in the short term, in the long term. So we are making that presentation, which I cannot at the moment immediately get into the nitty-gritty of it. But tomorrow I'm making that presentation as to what exactly we want to do. And the other thing that I think is important for us is to also to get the others who are on the outside to have an engagement as to, yes, you can have policy, but policy is a guideline. Policy is directing you. Yes, you can have government also giving you the direction as to what to do. But at the end of the day, it's about what environment are we creating to make sure that the children that we are talking about are protected at all levels.
But who dropped the ball? So, I mean, do you have a sense of appreciation of, one, the extent of the problem, and who dropped the ball along the process?
Yes, absolutely. We drop the ball in the case where we don't follow up, and first and foremost, our own systems not responding. That's why government has now decided that maybe one of the strongest things that we need to do to be accountable, we must have a strong monitoring and evaluation so that you don't get NGOs and others being the only ones that are standing up and raising the issue. Can you have a strong monitoring and evaluation? Because you say to the people of South Africa, we have the 5-year plan, here's the five-year plan, here's the implementation plan. Then you have the 1-year plan, which is the annual plan. You say, here's the annual plan. But the person that has to also hold you accountable, you must hold yourself accountable by making sure that what you've agreed you're going to do, you do. That's why at the level of the presidency, the strengthening of the monitoring and evaluation is also going to help us. But I must also say we look up to those that are picking up on these issues, whether they're NGOs, whether they are CBOs, because we believe that collectively as South Africans, we must work together in this one. As to who dropped the ball, Right now, for me, it's neither here nor there. My responsibility is now, as I say to the department today, I don't want to be a minister who is known to be a minister of only who wakes up because some court decision has been made. I need to put systems in place that are going to make me feel the people and make me feel when things are not going right. Let's not wait until issues go to court, until the court makes a decision for you. I don't want that.
Now, officials and bureaucrats like you have that responsibility of making sure that work is actually done. And as the minister says, you don't have to get instructions from the courts to do the work that you're supposed and employed to do, isn't it?
Yeah, I think on that one, it's quite critical that the caliber of the bureaucrats that we have, or the team, we call them team, need upscaling in terms of skills. The challenges that we experience today, we've evolved from the challenges that we used to have then. The ever-escalating number of children and clients that we now have, when you look at the database of the SASSA, it has escalated, amazingly so. But the manpower that you have in terms of human capital, time and again, we need to make sure that they are revived in terms of what they can be able to achieve, and they're sharpened in terms of their skills. And the pressures of the economy really doesn't allow us to stretch much in terms of having more in the system to deal with the ever-escalating numbers of challenges and ever-escalating numbers of beneficiaries that we have in our system.
And Vio, may I say, I speak from a practical example where I say to the officials, it's not about you sitting behind this desk. It's about the people that you left behind you. All of us here in Johannesburg, we came from one place or the other. And I make the example, if you want to reduce pressure even from yourselves as citizens, and black people in particular who still have the challenge of the black tax and all. I'm like, if you sit here and you realize that you will have less to worry about if you do what you're supposed to do and not tick in the box. I hate ticking in the box because my responsibility as a minister is about impacting on the people there. And in order to do what Tamo is talking about, we have to keep on motivating, keep on pushing the people that we work with, because you have to tell them it's not about me as the minister, it's about the people that we are supposed to service.
Now, if this crisis worsens or nothing is done about it, we're talking about what? Over 100,000 children may go hungry. Surely that's something that none of you want to happen.
We're working very closely with the department to make sure that we also put processes, because the people that do the payment is us as SASSA, to ensure that as the social workers go through the process of ensuring that the children go through the court process, we ensure that we don't drop the ball on our side by not ensuring that they actually get paid. So it's, again, if we work together, then we can ensure that we continue to pay whilst making sure that the court processes through the court, the justice system, that it actually happens. And again, it's only when we work together. But because we at provincial level and at local level are working together, it will relieve the pressure. But again, it's to make sure that this never happens again.
And we go together. One of the things that I said, having had experience from the Department of Small Business Development, having two agencies, I said one of the experiences that I had was the CIFA here, the CIDA there, there's the department in the middle, the other one goes that way, and the other one goes. That's that reason that one of the first things that I did in bringing together the agencies was to say, look guys, this is just not working. We're wasting resources, both human and financial, when we're not working together. We then also had to call the MECs of all the provinces, where we call them together and say, let's talk about what are the things that we can do collectively. Let's talk about the things that would belong to a provincial and local level. The biggest weakness we have is about the local structures. And we've said, if the president is talking about landing or descending at a district level, it was so exciting to be being in Lusikisiki, because it plays itself out where we're not talking to each other. We get to very good institutions that have been built by government, but the mayor's going that way, the premier's going the other day, we're going the other way, and we're saying, Can we stop that? Because we have proof of the fact that it doesn't help us. And our people, I don't think our people will be tolerant enough to wait for another 25 years for us to shift and move. It's also about agility. One of my biggest troubles that I say to them, if you're not agile to respond to what you see immediately and you went for long, long processes that does not bring the person who we're in charge of at the center, then you might as well not be in this office, quite frankly.
How big a contribution did the crisis or shortage of social workers make in this? To this crisis?
I think, Voyo, it does to a certain degree. But one need to mention that in the space of the development, it's not only government, it's always about partnership with civil society, that is mainly NGOs and NPOs. So those are playing...
These NGOs aren't doing particularly well at this stage, lack of funding, lack of coordination.
Yes, but the skills and expertise is there. Remember, we should move and shift our minds from that of being bureaucratic to say only the public servant are paid to do the job. I think if we want to develop as a country and to shift from that welfare mentality to developmental mentality, we need to enhance the strength that they have. We need to acknowledge the skill that they're bringing on the table. For us, even as professionals, to learn from them on what they've been doing continuously before even the times of the social workers were in space. So that kind of sharing the skills and skills transfer, it will sort of augment the gap that is of the shortage of social workers. And we acknowledge the shortage of social workers, not mainly for the foster grant, across the crime, the substance abuse that is forever escalating. When you look at the pressure that SAPS has faced, it talks to social workers as well. So it's broader. If we had to nab the issues of criminalities, we have to look at the broad spectrum of the pool of the social workers that are there that we need to tap into as a resource, not mainly from the social development perspective, but mainly from other government departments that can tap into the pool. Remember the investment that has been made by social development in training the social workers. Now, it cannot be expected that only social development will uptake all these. Department of Correctional Services, the SAPS, Department of Health, have a right to tap in this because it's been a resource for an investment from government. So that's what we are looking at as a collective. Like the minister has alluded to earlier, to say the president in the district model that we are going through around, that has been launched in 60, that's exactly what we want to tap into, to say what has been invested in by the certain department, let other departments not duplicate, rather complement and use other resources to stretch the rent.
Very quickly, just to close on this one, Minister, can you, without getting into the detail of getting into your presentation that you'll be making in Parliament tomorrow, but can you say here categorically that these children are, one, safe, and that they are being reunited with families? Everything is being done to make sure that they won't suffer whatever happens. At
the center of it all, it's not about us, it's about the children. So we have to make sure that we coordinate properly, we work with all the relevant structures to make sure that children are safe. There's nothing that is as critical for South Africa, and if you look at the challenges that we face, from child abuse to child trafficking to substance abuse and all that, I can say here, we will pull everything that we have in our power, working with others, because I really want us to move away from the thinking that it's only government that can be able to do this. Let me also tell you quickly, I'm excited about the way the private sector is now responding to us. I've said to the department, let's go back and say, how do we manage this partnership that we need to have? Because you say we need to partner. I'm making an example. Africa Tikkun comes running to us and says, oh, we're happy about what you're saying. You go to the department and say, let's do this. They say, Minister, we need to wait a little bit. We need to check the legalities. I'm not saying we must jump all over the show and not follow due process. It's about being quick about it, because we simply cannot afford. The future depends on these children. And so us coming together and working together is going to be very Government must be responsive. Government must keep the promise that it makes. If I say tomorrow I'm making a presentation, I must make sure that tomorrow morning, 8:30, I'm there, I'm ready to make my presentation. But I must have an open mind, because others might say, you thinking it's going to go this way, it might not go this way. So I'm 100% sure that what we're putting in place to deal with it will do the best way, working together. It's time we stopped working in silos. It's time we worked ourselves as government, the agencies, communities, NGOs, because I think social development is not about just government. Social development is about the well-being of all South Africans, but we focus on the most vulnerable because they're in a worse situation than me and my CEO sitting here.
Quickly on to another issue. Cash Paymaster Services last week lost its appeal bid. They've been ordered to pay, what, 316 million back to SASSA. Now, have you been able to deal with the problems that allowed that kind of situation to happen in the first instance? Because from what we heard coming out of the courts, it was that people signed, authorized, they didn't apply their minds to what the facts and the evidence that they were being presented with. The taxpayers' money got lost in the process.
I think for me the biggest focus amongst the priorities that I have is to make sure that, one, we hold people accountable. Whether this happened in the past or I will not allow it to happen currently, to the best of my ability. So where mistakes happened, we need to make sure that there's recourse to the mistakes that have happened in the past. But besides, in terms of the current process with the Auditor General, wherever mistakes happened, you need to make sure that you go and close the gap. So we don't have a choice but to make sure that we continue to hold people accountable. But besides, it's the right thing to do. And the one thing that I keep on insisting to the team is that we need to learn from our mistakes. If we've made mistakes in the past, we need to make sure that going forward, we don't repeat the same mistakes, because otherwise we don't become a learning organization. Yes, the decision was made last week, and I would hope that it's the end of that decision. It's not the last case that we have with CPS. We still have another hoops that we need to jump, and one can hope that sooner rather than later we can be able to sit around the table and say, what is it that we need to do to make sure that we get these off the table so that we can focus on building the lives of our people and focusing on the future, because these are the things that take us back, but they still have to be done and they still have to be fixed.
Minister, I mean, one of the reasons that government moved to involve the post office in the in SASSA grants was to eliminate fraud, corruption, the sort of things we're talking about now that CPS was in court about. Now there are reports that there's a lot going wrong there, fraud again. What do you know? What can you tell us?
There is a report already that has been presented to the CEO as well as myself. And it's the post office as well as the ministry that is in charge. We would like to hold them accountable for that, because we're not in charge necessarily of the post office, but we are one government. And therefore our approach has been, let's look at the report that we have in front of us. Let's look at what it says. The good thing about many of these reports, they tell you what needs to be done. So I've said, let's focus on the remedial action which were being directed already by the investigation that has happened. It's not the first investigation, actually. And I would like, both as a department but also as SASSA and the department of Minister Stella and Ndabeni Abrahams, for us to come together and focus on what the weaknesses are. Here's the biggest challenge about corruption. Corruption cannot point a finger one way. Because me and the CEO, we're sitting here, we've got all the systems, it's being presented to us that this system is locked this way and that way. You have people who are sitting behind the desk who have to punch this and punch that. They don't punch this and that because they've got other conversations somewhere else, which me and he have got nothing to do with. But ultimately, we must be held accountable, obviously, because we are the people. I'm the political head. She is the CEO. Our responsibility is to make sure that the system is locked. But you cannot run away from the fact that the thieves and the crooks and the tsotsis are lurking almost everywhere, looking for the smallest and shortest way of going through. And they have people who are sitting in the outside plotting and planning, because this is technological. It's no longer about somebody coming and saying, yeah, this is technological. If you look at the report that tells you where the cards were and that value chain of the development of the cards, and I was saying to the CEO, she'll tell you, I was saying, hi man, but we've got the banks that are known in South Africa to have the best system and all. Why are we still in this space even today? It means our system must be locked. So it means national intelligence must come into play. Other people that have got a better understanding of the technology must come and help us. But fraud is one of the biggest problems that South Africa faces, both in government and outside government, because those cards, the fraud that's going on that card, mark my words, it's got very little to do with people who are sitting there. We have to register people and give them the cards. It starts back to the people who are supposed to be locking figures and everything. They are already sitting there and saying, how can we make a quick one? My view is South Africa needs to take a step back and say, what is it that we need to do to deal with the quick fix mentality? I want the money today, I want it now, I don't care how I get it, I want it now. It's a broader societal problem, because unfortunately for us, you find that even the people who are beneficiaries, it's shocking that some of the beneficiaries are involved in all these things. So these people are not thinking about the fact that there's the next person and there's the next person whose life depend on this. They're sitting there and saying, I want to rob the system in the best way that I can. So we all have to collectively say, what can we do to help our own people understand that when government has got money, it's not their money, it's money that's supposed to help the most vulnerable. And in this case is the number of grants that we have to pay as SASSA through the Department of Department of Social Development.
What for you stands out in that report?
I think for me what stands out in that report is the fact that, because what's important to indicate is that we identified the challenge in January.
Yes.
We together with SAPO went to PASA to say, we're experiencing this, what is it that we need to do? And PASA came up with to say we need to get a risk management company to come and do an assessment so that we can identify what the causes of this is. Because at the time in January, we identified that there was quite a bit of fraud that was taking place. They came with a whole range of solutions, many of which SAPO has actually already started implementing. Some of them will have to work through over the next 18 months, but we're working together with the Post Office to make sure that we find solutions. Some may be painful solutions, but the one thing that we're committing to is no beneficiary or client is going to go without being paid. In instances where there's fraud that takes place, we have a process of clients going to report either to the Post Office or to us, and we make sure that the clients get paid as quickly as we can, whether they are getting paid through the banks or they are getting paid through the Post Office. It's a painful process because we had to, unfortunately, get out of the court of being managed by courts. And in the process, we did things too quickly, and some of the security measures were not taken care of. And those are the things that we're working on. And I believe we will turn the corner. Together, we can turn the corner if we worked together.
Can you vouch for the integrity of the SASSA system?
What do you mean of the SASSA system? Are you talking about the cards that are issued by...
The cards, everything. Can you still say that you are in charge, notwithstanding the problems that you
I can vouch to the fact that when it comes to the SASSA system, which is the SOCPEN, I know what beneficiaries are in my system. I know what beneficiaries should be getting paid on a monthly basis. And I know when money is getting switched, we've put processes whereby we're able to stop that, working together with all the different partners that we have, the banks together with the Post Office.
Now, apart from these known cases, whether it's the grants or whether it's the orphaned and vulnerable children, what are the other challenges facing social development currently?
If I may, as a family, which social development, NDA, and SASSA are challenges of impact when we're talking development, as a country, we should be at this stage after 25 years, be at least 2% showing impact of the interventions and the expenditure in terms of fiscus that has been invested in trying to turn the corner. However, it's only now that when we had reflected on the 25-year review to say social development, we're more on the welfare part of things, capacitating NGOs, NPOs and all that, but to measure and talk on statistics, it's one thing, but to talk of impact, to say, if we've been funding this NGO for so many millions over this period, what has been the scale of impact? How many people have we managed to take out of substance abuse? How many people have we been able to link into economic opportunities and stuff like that? Only under the leadership of Minister currently, she's very, very adamant, excuse me, that we need to look into impact. If NDA has got this role to play in capacitating the civil society through dialogues and all that, interfacing with SASSA in terms of their clients, how are we managing to say, as much as they are SASSA clients, but they are active in terms of economic opportunities, they are being given that strategic empowerment capabilities through resources, through implements and all that, so that through training, so that we give them that grant to leverage and allow them a space and a suitable environment for them to thrive in a more sustainable manner. Safe to say, Vuyo, no one wants to be identified with poverty from birth to death. You want at some stage to brag that you are sustainable, you can do things for yourself. And traditionally, African people have pride. They have sense of identity. So as social development, we've been lagging behind in terms of that shift from welfare state of mind to that developmental state of mind, where most of the economic entrepreneurial programs are linked to small businesses a department and CEDA. They are registered as cooperatives, and they are thriving in their role in terms of contributing to the GDP of the country. Also, the role of the private sector. We know that they have drips and drabs interventions that they do. What we've been missing in social development is how do we make an targeted influence from CSI of the private sector to talk to the targeted areas. Talk about Wilsigisi, where the president and all the cabinet had descended, to say, what have we identified as private sector who will be in that space with us until we see impact? Then we shift to another district. So that's how strategically, as a country, remember NDA is for the country development. That's how we want to see our programs beyond the portfolio approach, which is social development and SASSA, but beyond other government departments and mainly private sector. We have the likes of trialogues. But when you engage and interface with them, it's hardly to touch on the ground which of this civil society they have partnered with and what impact are they doing. So it's a matter of holding each other accountable as government, civil society, and private sector to ensure that we can measure the impact that we're doing going forward.
Quick last word from you, Minister. I mean, you've been in this portfolio for what, over 100 days now? What would you say has been your single biggest achievement so far? Or what have you done? You took over a department that was mired in controversy, in and out of court. What would you say you've done?
The stability, because you hardly see the department except for what you see a bit of SASSA here and there. My first approach to them was, I don't want us to be in the media for wrong reasons. I want us to be in that space communicating to our people what we are capable of doing, what we have to offer to everyone. But I think the other achievement was also having a buy-in from the portfolio committee, who we had a workshop across the party line, because I've said social development, sometimes you even need to take your political cap and put it aside and say, what is it that we'd want to do collectively as South Africans to make sure that we change the lives of our people? And in the first 3 months, I may say that we've been in office, this very portfolio approach has been one of our best achievements, because we're working together and saying, united, we will be able to do this work. And lastly, it's about the response that one has received from the private sector, from the NGOs, from a point that says, let's not look at social development purely from a SASSA point of view. Let's look at social development as these are two vehicles that we need to use. But social development, I've made it a point, that it's about all South Africans, irrespective of what they are, where they are, but we need to focus on the most vulnerable because they are in a worse position than most of us who've been lifted a little bit. So that's what I feel excited about. Lastly, it's about pushing the staff to work, pushing the staff to realize and understand it's not about the desk that they have to sit behind, it's about the impact that they need to make on changing the lives of our people, working together with other departments in a coordinated manner.
That's where we're going to leave it for this evening. Minister of Social Development, Lindiwe Zulu, CEO of the NDA, Thamo Mzobe, and SASSA CEO, Busisiwe Memela.